Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's VPK Provider Town Hall meeting. Before we get started, if you could just please place yourselves on mute if you're not muted already. You'll know that you're muted by the diagonal line that's drawn through the microphone that's located at the lower left hand of your screen. This is just going to help us prevent the audio feedback while the presenters are speaking. Next, I'd like you to locate your chat icon at the bottom of your screen. If you could just take a moment and type your name and the center that you're representing into the chat box at this time. If at any time that you have questions, we're asking that you please type them into this chat box. And because you're muted today during today's town hall meeting, we're going to use this chat box for your questions. All right, thank you so much, and we'll get started.
Welcome. Thanks everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'm Jennifer Grant, the CEO of the Coalition, for those of you that I have not met in person. And all of my colleagues from the Coalition are on today to join us, so they will correct me if we get anything wrong. The goal of today is really just to talk about the VPK program as a whole and hopefully give you some ideas of where things are with the VPK program for starting this fall. There's a lot of uncertainty. We're all working through this together, but we know you have lots of questions, and we're hoping to at least alleviate some of those concerns and give you some options that you can work from. But our goal is just to support you as you move forward into the school year of uncertainty that we're all working under. Today, we're going to talk about the rates for the fall and next summer's program. We'll talk about the CARES grant, the VPK fact sheet. We have a parent fact sheet that you can use that OEL's produced. We have some program options and some suggestions. And then we'll go through some questions that you've sent us ahead of time that we've heard about. There are some parent questions that we've gotten that we wanted to share answers with you. And then if we are able to, we'll try and take other questions, or we can always do a follow-up later. We're also recording this so that if your colleagues want to listen to this, or if you want to go back and reference it later on, we'll have that available for you as well. So why don't we go ahead? The good news for this fall is that there was an increase in the Florida legislature for the VPK program. It's not huge considering all of the extra challenges that we're facing right now, but it's a $49 per student increase. So for the school year program, we will be reimbursing at $4.58 per hour for the school year program. That's the 540-hour program. And for the summer program, that's next summer, we will be paying $7.04 per hour. So it's a $42 increase. I know most of you know we've been working for a very long time to get more money for the services that you offer. And this is a step in the right direction. So believe it or not, this came before we actually knew about COVID. That was voted on at the legislature before we knew about that. So the governor has maintained that in the budget, which was great. So that's good news, at least to get us started with the year. The summer program's Office of Early Learning sent out a letter with this information. All of you should have received this, but we wanted to let you know that you'll continue for summer providers, that's this current summer, you'll continue to be reimbursed for July service period based on enrollment rather than attendance, even if you have intermittent closures due to COVID. And what that means is if a child attended, they had to at least come to your program. They could not have been enrolled but never showed up. We will pay for absences after that and for temporary COVID-related closures. Right now, for the school year program, August service period, we will pay based on enrollment, but it's after the student's first day of attendance. If a family opts not to come, not to attend, then we don't pay absences for a child that you have a certificate for but never attended your program. So I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that, because it's fantastic that in August we'll be able to pay for temporary closures or additional absences. We need to make sure that the children actually attend at least one day before those absences kick in, those payments for absences. We do not know at this time if that will be extended for September, October, November, and so on. The state is looking at this every couple of weeks to see the status of things in the community, and we're working on some other funding options available to try and support you, as you're aware. But right now, the only thing that I know for sure is that we will be able to pay for additional absences after the first day of enrollment for August. If, you know, COVID numbers keep increasing and we keep having problems, there's a good chance that the state government will approve, the Office of Early Learning will get approval to continue to pay for absences and closures. But as of right now, absences, the 80-20 rule will kick in as of September 1st. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Most of you probably know about the CARES grants. Our deadline was Monday, but I don't want, if anybody is hearing this for the first time and you are interested in this grant and believe that you may be eligible, please check on our website. There were two, this is the funding from the federal government related to COVID aid relief and emergency funding. And we were able to get phase 1 funding for providers that were open as of April 30th. They may have had intermittent closures, but there's funding available through a grant process for those providers. Phase 2 is for high quality providers. You may not have been open on April 30th, but you are planning to reopen or have reopened prior to August 1st. So the date is prior to August 1st. And the high quality piece is that you either are a school readiness provider, so and have a score of 3.5 on the class assessment, or you hold a gold seal status. And the letter noted that if you didn't reopen by the date that you were intending to, we would have to recoup those funds. Just to let you know, the Office of Early Learning, I know some of you did not reopen during last school year, and perhaps your start date for this fall is not before August 1st. It's my understanding that the Office of Early Learning is looking for a phase 3 and perhaps even a phase 4 of CARES grants. So after we get through this process, there will be additional funding and grant opportunities for those of you that did not get captured or covered with these grant opportunities. And we are advocating at the coalition level for those of you that have an opening date of August 10th or August 24th to have access to some of these CARES funds as well. So we're still working through that process. Don't despair. There's still funding available, and we're just working with the Office of Early Learning to understand what those requirements will be so that we can share that information with you. So if you did not qualify for phase 1 or phase 2, there are more opportunities that will be coming for you. The VPK fact sheet for families. I believe this is on our website. We'll also send it out via email to all of you to make sure that this is available. This is the standard information about VPK for families. And a lot of families are looking at, and we'll see in the questions, options to know what's available to them. In the past, most of our families looked at the public school schedule and expected that when public school started, that's when the 4-year-old would start. You'd follow the same calendar, and that's what they worked towards. We now have the opportunity to use the flexibility that the VPK program allows you, which is to meet the needs of your families. So if a 4-year-old is born before September 1st, but their birthday is somewhere between February 2nd and September 1st, they could actually wait until the next year. Instead of using VPK this year, they could wait and use their VPK opportunity the following year. So that's an option for your families that you want to make sure that they're aware of for some folks that are concerned about bringing their kids into a VPK program at this time. So just sharing this with you so that you can use this to inform families about their options that are available to them. That second slide, I think, is just the back of the flyer. It's the second piece. Again, it talks about the different types of programs that are available. You don't have to just attend one calendar type of VPK program, that there are a variety of them. But our school year program is required to have 540 hours. The summer program for next summer, as it stands right now, is required to have 300 hours. As you know, they offered at very short notice a 200-hour summer option for this current summer that we're in right now. That was a last-minute opportunity just to capture some more children. So these are all of the different opportunities and the ways that families can find available providers. Obviously, if they're talking with you, they know about your VPK programs. There we go. So a lot of you have expressed concerns about what do we do. For those of you that haven't seen it, our public schools, I'm sure if you're watching the news at all, our public schools are looking at all the varieties of options that they have available to them to continue to educate children and still meet the needs of their families and remain in a safe environment. We're hearing a lot about, for our school readiness side of the house, that some families would rather take their school-age children to a smaller environment at a child care center rather than sending them to a large school environment. So we're hearing all kinds of different needs. Some parents want their kids back in school, traditional, regular, every day. Some are worried. So we know that there's a variety of needs, and VPK is a perfect program for parent choice. You have the ability to offer a program that meets the needs of your families, with a few exceptions, of course. But one of the suggestions that we have is simply to survey the families that you are serving. For those of you that said that you wanted to start August 10th, on the same date that the public school was planning to start the public school calendar, you do not have to maintain that. You certainly can. You can keep your program established at the same date that you had originally planned to start, and you have every authorization to do so. As long as we've signed your contract and authorized your teacher's credentials, you're ready to go. If, because of the change of the public school or the needs of your families, you choose to push that calendar back, you are more than welcome to do that. The only goal here is you have to have credentialed teachers and offer during the school year 540 hours. So those hours could start in September. You could start those hours in October and have a longer day. You could, instead of having a traditional spring break, you could have VPK hours offered when the public school is offering a spring break time. You have the ability to set the calendar to meet your needs of yours and your staff and the families that you're serving. As things stand right now, you could start a program in October or November, again with longer instructional days. For classrooms that start at a later date, you could potentially, if you have more than one classroom, you could start one on August 10th or August 17th, as you had originally planned, and you could start a second classroom at a later date and then have longer hours so that they end at the same time in the year. We talked a little bit about suggesting that if you start later, you could keep your families engaged by doing at-home, take-home activities, virtual circuit time, social media connections, those kinds of things. But I have to explain to you that virtual VPK is not authorized at this time. So we know it's in the best interest of children to stay connected, to have them know who their teacher is, and to try and establish that connection. If you decide to start in October or January with a class, you can connect with those children and try and keep their parents engaged and the children engaged in learning activities, but that is not considered a virtual VPK for paid services. I know a lot of you have asked that question, and I think we go to it later on, but virtual VPK is not authorized. Although the K through 12 system is being allowed because of the laws that govern what they offer, they're authorized to offer a virtual opportunity. At this time, we are not authorized to pay for virtual VPK. That doesn't mean many of you, in March of this year, spent a lot of effort to connect with your students and continue their learning in virtual activities and take-home connections, social media, and so on. I was really proud of a lot of the things that you all have done. Not to take credit for that, but it was just exciting to be in a community that reached out to the children and tried to help them continue their learning throughout such an unprecedented time. At this time, we are not authorized to pay for virtual VPK. That doesn't mean that something might not change in the future, but as of this time, because VPK is established in the Constitution of Florida and has different laws, what we will do is we have to have a face-to-face VPK at this time. And we're waiting to see what creative options may come down the line. Again, another suggestion is for centers with multiple classes, you could have them start at different times. We know that some families with older children want a calendar that matches the public school. And so if you have a lot of those families, you may offer one class that matches that calendar and offer another one that starts later. Okay. All right, so we're going to start to go into some of the questions that we've received, and hopefully this will be helpful for you. I'm going to open the chat box as well. So let's go to the first one that we've got in here. Okay, so this is one of the first concerns. What happens if COVID requires the loss of a lead teacher? And we know that VPK requires you to have no more than 30% of the hours with a substitute, okay? What we want to recommend is that you plan to have substitutes that have the qualifications of a lead teacher. If your substitutes are qualified, you can replace your lead teacher, and it's no longer considered a substitute. The substitute limitation really goes into the calculation when you have someone that doesn't meet all of the qualifications as a lead. So we're highly recommending that you look at everyone within your center to see who could be qualified and get those credentials, run through DCF, make sure that we have them on file at our coalition. If that's all set up, it will be relatively easy for you to notify us that you are replacing the lead. And as long as it's a credentialed teacher, it's no longer considered a substitute. And really there's no limit. Obviously, for the benefit of children, we don't want a new lead teacher every week. But there's no limit on the replacement of your lead teacher. And certainly during this pandemic, if you have health-related issues and a teacher is required to be out for 14 days to quarantine, or a teacher is ill and is maybe out for a month or two, if you have another, what's considered a substitute on your paperwork, but they are qualified as a lead, we would simply work with you to replace that lead in your class. Okay. All right. Can we offer a virtual option? So I talked about that one. In my conversations with the Office of Early Learning, they are very much looking for flexibility. That's why we're highlighting today the flexibility that you currently have with the VPK program to really offer a program that meets the needs of your families. Office of Early Learning, it has taken for previous waivers sometimes 2 and 3 months to get approval to offer something different. For example, to pay for absences or to offer that 200-hour summer VPK program that we were able to offer at the last minute this year. It takes months to get that approval. It is my understanding that the Office of Early Learning is still exploring what options of flexibility, what creativity we can use with our VPK 4-year-old program. But as things stand today, it could change tomorrow, but as things stand today, a virtual option is not allowed under OEL's interpretation of the statutes and the Constitution that define VPK. Okay. What if I have to quarantine a classroom for 14 days? Essentially, for those of you who haven't been open, what we are seeing happen in the community is if you're following the CDC guidelines and you are keeping your teacher and one group of children, CDC recommends 9 children to 1 teacher, but that could be a larger group. It's not law, it's recommendation. If those teachers and those children are staying isolated, if one of those children tests positive, what we are seeing, and this is up to the health department, they are coming in and suggesting that only one classroom needs to quarantine. You don't need to shut down your entire center. And so if in the case of VPK, there were a positive teacher or a positive child in that classroom, they may ask you to close that down and have someone quarantine for 14 days. You have two options at that point. If all of the children are being asked to quarantine, and the health department will communicate that with you, if they're all being asked to quarantine, you can do one of two things. You can either change your calendar and get with our team members to go in and say, kind of like after a hurricane, if you lost power for a month and everybody else was back after 2 days, you may have needed to change your calendar so you could continue to offer those 540 hours to the children. In this case, if you had to close your class for 2 weeks, you could add on, again, pickup hours during spring break. You could add an extra half an hour to a day for a number of days until you made up those 2 weeks of instructional time. That is one option for you. The second option would be that we pay for up to 20% absences. Taking out that we're paying for all absences in August, starting September 1 at this time, we would be back to what we call the 80-20 rule, meaning if the children attend 80% of the offered hours, we will pay for absences of up to 20% by the end of the year. Those 14 days could be paid if those children don't miss more than that time frame. So it would fall, those days would fall under the 80-20 rule, and you would get paid for those days as long as the children didn't miss more than 20% of the offered hours, instructional hours. So there are two options available to you. And you have to make that decision with the parents and your teachers as to what's the best option for your families as far as redoing your calendar and extending those 2 weeks, or turning around and just using those as absences. But you have both of those options available. And again, if the state turns around and says we will pay for absences, if we get that August paying for enrollment piece extended into September, then you wouldn't have to worry about that either. Those two options are under our traditional VPK rules. Okay. Are there any extensions in place for qualification requirements? There are not at this time. You still have to have a CDA, you have to have the appropriate coursework to qualify as a lead teacher and an assistant teacher. I know in March, there had been some extensions on when you could take the test for your 40 hours and things like that. At this time, we do not see any extensions for the qualifications to be a VPK director, lead teacher, or assistant teacher in the VPK classroom. So this is where we go back to look and make sure that you've identified as many people in your center or potential substitutes as possible with the qualifications to be a lead, because that will help you in the event that you have your lead teacher out at any time. What happens if less than 4 children show up on the first day of class? As the rule stands right now, it would be the same as any other year. If 4 children are enrolled, but only 2 of them show up on the first day, you technically will need to redo your calendar. You cannot start a VPK program as it stands right now with 4 or fewer children. So that's where, communicating with your parents and finding out if they've changed their mind and do not want to be in a VPK class, you may want to consider that. If you have more than one class and only 2 children show up for class B, but class A, 4 of them show up, you could transfer those 2 children from class B into class A. The issue is you need to notify us through EFS Mod. You have to let us know that you've transferred those children, because if we turn around and try to pay, we will refuse payment for children that are enrolled in a class with less than 4 children. So that's where you're going to go into EFS Mod and transfer those children from the class of 2, where 2 kids didn't show up for that day, and or show up for the class at all, and move them into another class. So you have the ability to transfer children. Obviously, for the benefit of children, you want to stay in communication with your families. We don't want to be moving children into a class and out of a class and into a class. We certainly want those best practices of trying to engage children with their teacher and having that stability in their classroom, but knowing that the start of this school year is going to be a little rocky, you do have that flexibility to work with the families to transfer children if you're trying to start 2 classes and only enough for 1 class shows up. Can I offer a program with more than 3 days per hour? Absolutely. Many of you have experienced this because you've offered a variety of programs. Sometimes we have a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday program. We have a program that has Fridays off. You absolutely can offer a program with more than 3 hours per day. And you don't have to start in August. You could start in August, you can start in October, you can start in December or January. Truly, as long as you are able to get 540 hours in, you are able to start that class whenever you want. We recommend no more than 6 hours a day. We know summer sometimes ends up being an 8 or a 9 hour program to get all 300 hours into a shortened summer. It's not really developmentally appropriate. It's a very long learning day for children if you're going more than 6 hours in a day. But you need to meet the needs of your children and families. So we have the ability to work with you to offer, as many hours a day as you need to meet the needs of those children and families and get 540 hours in. And we've, over the years, have had a number of programs that will offer a fall program for 6 hours a day and start another program in January for 6 hours a day. So that is not unheard of, and it may give some of your families some more time to feel confident. It also may allow us more time to see if the state of Florida will give us more wiggle room on potential virtual options or some other flexibilities that we currently do not have. Next question. How do I change my calendar? Knew you were going to ask that. You need to go into the OEL portal. So those of you that said you were going to start on August 10th and you're feeling like that's not a good idea at this time, or your families have shared with you that they don't want to do that, you're actually going to go into the OEL portal to your VPK application and change the start and the end date of your program. That's the first step in that process. Please email Lori or Sandy, let us know that you've done that, because they look all the time, but there's a lot of changes happening, and we don't want to miss that you've made a change in EFS mod and we haven't gotten in to approve it and work through any kinks or problems with that process. So please make sure that you just email Lori or Sandy to make sure they're aware and they can approve your changes. But you can change that calendar in EFS mod whenever you're ready to do so. Okay. Lori, did I miss anything?
No, and just so you know, Kalisa just uploaded the new Seminole County Public Schools revised calendar for reference in case anyone needs it who has not changed their calendar at this point.
So you don't have to, but that's a reference for you to know, because when they started a later start date, I think they changed some non-instructional days and some of those kind of things. And again, if you're trying to meet the needs of your families that want to mirror what the public school is doing, this is a reference for you. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so parent questions. We'll get back to the questions. I know some folks are typing questions in, but parents have been calling me directly. I'm sure they've been talking to you about what is available to them. The first thing is, can a child start VPK in January if not in August? So there are two answers to this question. The easy answer is yes, of course. If you have in a VPK program, if you have a program that starts in August and you have space in a classroom in January, a family can sign up, and it's called a delayed enrollment. They can come in January, but that's up to you if you have space available in January. Okay, so that's the first thing, is absolutely they can have a delayed enrollment, but they are essentially being made aware that they're not going to get a full 540 hours if they start in January in a program that started, or a classroom that started in August or September. On the other hand, as a center, you have the ability to offer a January option. And if you have enough families that would make financial sense for your center, you have enough families that would really like to start in January, you have the option of starting a full class of 540 hours that would start in January and go until the end of May, beginning of June. So you have the ability to do that as well. But yes, a parent has the right to start anytime. Remember, this is a voluntary program. So as long as you have space available to accept them in January, yes, they can come. You are not required to hold a spot for them for an August class if they're not interested in attending at this time. That's certainly your private business decision, but you're not required to hold a spot. Okay. Can I postpone till next summer? That's another big parent question. I have a feeling next summer we're all going to be looking at if and when we want to offer more summer programs. Generally speaking, over the years that VPK has been in existence, we've had lower and lower numbers using the summer program, but there is an opportunity for families to access and for you to offer as a provider a 300-hour summer program. As things stand currently, the teacher in that program would have to be a bachelor degree teacher. And that 300-hour program is often a long day, but yes, families have the right to postpone until next summer. If you are not offering a summer program, then they have a right to look, again, based on parent choice, at providers that are offering summer programs. And if you opt and are looking at or seriously considering offering a summer program or offering a January program, I highly recommend that you work with us to get that in EFS mod, because then when parents randomly call us to know what options are there for them, we will be able to say we know of 4 centers that are offering a program that starts in January. And we can help to direct families to the programs that are available to meet their needs. So if you're seriously considering a summer program next year or a program that starts in January, we recommend that you let us know that so that we can add that information in the profile that our families are accessing to look for available opportunities. Okay. Next question. Can I postpone until next fall? I feel like I should unplug everybody and see if you know the answer to this one. The answer is yes, for children whose birth date, if they turn, let me get this right, if the child turns 5 after February 2nd, 2021, they can choose to use VPK the following year. So families with younger children, if they're in the younger half of that VPK class, they are eligible to use VPK only one time. They either can use it this fall or they can postpone and use it the following fall. The reason that you're not eligible for any child to use VPK either year is because the law states that when you are 6, by February 1st, you are required to be in 1st grade, and that's the law. So we can't offer a VPK experience when a child is of age to be in a 1st grade classroom by law. But for families that have children that are younger, perhaps postponing the VPK experience till the following year or over the summer is another opportunity for those families. Again, they can only do it once though. It's either a summer or a school year program. Okay. Is there a virtual VPK being offered? A lot of parents are asking this. I'm having lots of conversations with folks and have explained that as the rules and the laws stand today, we do not have the authority to offer VPK virtually. However, what I have explained to parents, and I encourage you to do the same, is if they start a VPK program and for safety reasons, they need to back out, they have the opportunity to stay in contact or to transfer to a program that meets their needs. And we're letting them know that some programs will have varying start dates. So there may be a program available that would meet their needs. They could postpone until summer, or they can wait. One of the challenges that we ran into this last year is when we took the opportunity to pay for absences. We were given the ability to pay even though programs were closed or children weren't attending. What happens in that situation is the amount that's allocated for that child to attend VPK cannot be used later on. So if you use over 70% of that 540 hours, you can't use it again over the summer because you didn't attend. So just be aware when in working with your families, if the families end up dropping out, we want to make sure that if they have a good cause for dropping out, that they can transfer to a summer program or use another program at another time. So we want to just make sure that you're aware of that. When we're paying for absences, we can't pay again later on if, let's say, we got lucky and we got to have some kind of a virtual absence. You can't pay for virtual later on if you already paid for absences for a program that a child didn't attend. What do we have next? Okay, more questions. Do we want to talk about the ones that are in the chat box?
I can go ahead and read them if you like, Jennifer.
Sure.
We have, if a child who is already enrolled for this school year and enrolled into a class and the parents decide to start in January, do we need to take the child out or change the anticipated start date for that child?
Well, the question is, are you holding a slot for that child? If that class is going to be starting in January, then yes, you want to change the start date for that child. If that child is enrolled and you're holding a spot for that child, then the start date is the first day that they actually physically attend. So it's really up to you as to whether or not you're holding a slot for a child that is not going to attend your school.
Okay, we had another question. I'm not quite sure where it was pertaining to, but it was saying, did you say absences won't count in August?
What I'm saying, what I said was that children who attend at least one day, we will pay for those absences. So they're under the emergency order of COVID-19, and the 80-20 rule will kick in from September 1st through the end of your calendar. So we would pay 20% of absences after that end of August.
Okay. If you've already uploaded your VPK vouchers and a family decides not to attend VPK due to COVID, what should we do?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to toss it to some of our team members. Can providers actually unenroll in their class?
Yes, they can. If they know the child is not coming back, then they should terminate them, because down the road they might want to re-enroll somewhere else, and we would need to know, they would need to know how many hours the child has actually attended, meaning reimbursed for. So yes, they could change their mind and decide not to, but that doesn't mean later on they might want to re-enroll that child, which means they would.
Thank you, Lori. So you'd terminate the child before they ever even attended, so 0 hours would be counted toward that child. And then if you offered a later class, you could re-enroll them in that class that you offered starting in January, or they would have the option to go to a summer program or another location. Thank you. Let's see.
What about assessments? We need to do the first during the first 30 days of class. But due to the pandemic, what happened if any child goes the first few days and then doesn't return until after 30 days?
If the child is not physically present in your center, then there's really not much you can do. What we'd like to do is just make sure that you have documentation of that. We can't ask you to assess a child that's not in your presence. The 30 days starts at the beginning of your program. Lori pointed out to me earlier, and I'm going to try not to mess this up, Lori. Make sure that in Bright Beginnings that your start date is parallel to the start date in EFS Mod, because if in Bright Beginnings you said your class was going to start on August 10th, and you actually change in Mod to start August 24th, you're losing 2 weeks, and Bright Beginnings is going to say you're late in getting those assessments done. So it's 30 days, you conduct them 30 days from the start of your program. And if the child is not there and does not return within that 30-day period, I'm going to have to look for additional guidance from the state, because if the child comes back on day 35, in my recommendation as a teacher, you would want to see where that child is. And I would want you, for instructional purposes, to still assess that child, knowing that they were absent during that time. As far as putting that in Bright Beginnings, I'm going to have to look at the state and ask that. But remember that this assessment is not just for the purposes of readiness rates and that whole piece, but it's also to guide instruction. And if you have a child that you met for 3 days and then they were out for 4 weeks, and then they come back and they've joined your class, you want to know where that child is. And it's a good idea to assess them to guide instruction and make sure you're meeting the needs of the child, even amongst all of this pandemic stuff going on.
Many parents are asking if they can have their school-age child attend the center instead of school. Are we allowed to have them during school hours, private and SR?
Okay, so the first thing you have to look at is your DCF license. Are you licensed to have school-age children in your facility? And do you have space to make sure that you're legally operating? That's your first point of reference. The second piece is that if you are a school readiness provider or a private provider, as long as you're legally operating to have those children in your school, yes, the answer is yes. For school readiness, I am waiting to receive this information in writing, so I'm going to give you a big caveat here. It is my understanding in verbal conversation with the Office of Early Learning that if you have a child under school readiness that's school age during what would be a school day, if they are in your center more than 6 hours, we will be able to pay you the full-time school readiness rate. And that's, I know this is a VPK question, but we do know a lot of families are looking for smaller ratios, more intimate settings where they feel like their children will be safer. And if our private childcare environments can meet the needs of those families, again, you have to be legally operating. The DCF needs to have authorized you to have school-age children in your facility. Please don't open a shed in the back and put a bunch of school-agers in there. You need to make sure that you're meeting all the health and safety requirements. I know you guys get creative and you're trying to meet the needs of families, but make sure you're legally operating. And then, yes, I think that this is a great opportunity for the childcare and the early education environment that have always met the needs during school breaks and holidays to meet the needs of children and families during this time when families aren't comfortable going back to school. So as long as it's meeting those legal requirements, you certainly have the ability to do that.
Okay, is there an additional reimbursement for an accredited program on top of the $4.58 per hour?
No, the VPK program is a flat rate program and the legislature decides that each year. Our school readiness contract pays based on Gold Seal, and for school readiness we can pay more if you are accredited with a Gold Seal recognized organization, accrediting body, I should say, that's recognized by the state of Florida, DCF, as a Gold Seal provider. So we're able to pay more. We also have a stipend, a quality performance incentive for those school readiness providers that reach a score of 3.5 or 4.0 or higher on the class score. In school readiness, you're required to take a class assessment each year, usually once a year, and that score will allow you to receive a higher quality performance incentive as well. But for VPK, it is a flat rate for qualified entities each year, and that rate, obviously this year we're making a little bit more, but it's decided upon by the legislature each year.
If you already filled out the voucher with a start date, but now it has changed, do we need to obtain a new copy or change it on the voucher and then initial it?
I think right now changing it on the voucher and initialing it is fine in your records, because this is a moving target and we don't want to add extra burdens to families to go get a new voucher. As long as you're working with the families and they're aware of the changes, obviously they would be, I think just one line strike through, be careful, please do not use whiteout on formal documents, because when we get audited or we look at you for monitoring, whiteout, nobody can tell what happened. If a one line through or writing off to the side and initialing it would be the best way to make those changes.
And I think that is it, Jennifer. I'm not seeing any new questions.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, again, I will say I really appreciate all of your patience with us. I know that you're making calls to our team members who are working virtually right now, and they're trying very hard to return all of those calls. Hopefully this gets everybody on the right track. You know what flexibility you have to work through your VPK program this year. And certainly if you consult with your families and need to shift things around, you have our support in doing that. I know our team members have been working a lot of hours to try and meet your needs with the ever-changing environment. So we appreciate your patience. Believe it or not, we don't have any idea what monitoring is going to look like this year. We are not currently sending folks out to your centers to do those monitors. We may get creative and ask you to send stuff to us or upload things later on. But as things stand, all of the VPK requirements that have always been in place and are still in your contract still hold. But certainly we don't want to risk bringing extra risks into your environment, into your classroom at this time. So we're not planning, if you start VPK August 10th, we're not planning to come out on the 12th to ask for your files at this point. And we'll probably have another one of these meetings once we figure out what monitoring looks like, because again, we still have to meet the requirements of the state funds and the contractual obligations, but we just don't know what that looks like yet, and nobody really needs that extra burden to try and figure that out. So let us work on that on our side, and then we will have another meeting with you all to kind of share with you what monitoring looks like and what we're going to be doing this year to meet those requirements, but not add extra burden onto your service to children. And we wish you the best for this school year. We know that this is really challenging, and families are asking for a lot of extra reassurance, and we'll continue to do what we can to try and support you, but we appreciate everything that you're doing.
Jennifer, can you just restate the requirements for summer VPK teachers?
The lead teacher in a summer VPK classroom has to have a bachelor's level degree, correct? And I'm going to throw it to Lori again if I, okay, make sure I didn't miss anything.
It's very specific. If you go to the OEL website, they actually have staff, but you can always contact Sandra and we will give you those requirements, as well as they can have a Florida educator certificate, but certain requirements also with what age level they're able to teach or qualified to teach based on their Florida educator certificate. It does not have to be, it can be expired, believe it or not, but it cannot be revoked. So we always check that. And that's all that's needed as far as a teacher who holds that credential. But there's also other bachelor's degrees that fall into that or higher. So, but like I said, it'd be best to contact Sandra and we can give you more information on that.
Yeah, we've learned lessons learned over the years just to be careful, because just because someone has a bachelor's degree doesn't mean that that bachelor's degree qualifies. So, and every teacher and every credential is different. So let us help you with that review so that as soon as possible, so that we're setting you up for success and you're selecting candidates that will be able to meet your needs for a summer program. Sorry, Kalisa.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I did add Lori and Sandy's email address into the chat box, and then I had a couple more questions that popped up. So,
okay.
How do we go about changing the calendar to reflect the new start date after VPK contract has been initiated?
So that's where you're going to go into your VPK application. and we can make changes to that. So in the OEL portal, the EFS mod portal, you're going into your application and you're changing the start date and end date, and then emailing Sandy or Lori so that they can authorize that and accept those changes.
Okay. And the next one, we'd only opt to do a summer VPK if we didn't select to do a school year VPK, or could the summer be considered a second VPK class?
Absolutely, you can offer both. You only need to have 4 students to be considered a class. Now you need to look at your budget and know if you want to run a class with only 4 students. That's obviously a fiscal decision that you need to make. But as far as the regulations go, if you have 4 kids for a school year program and 4 kids for a summer program, you can absolutely offer both.
Okay, I think that's it for questions.
Okay. Thank you. Keep them coming. We'll keep trying to answer them. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.